Wait, what? There's an Origins Star Trek movie? Yes. Today on episode 364, Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and Trekland Treks. Hey, your home for unique, customized one-day away missions in the Los Angeles area, and your home for some clarity, sanity, and the bigger picture in all things Star Trek. I say that every week because when I first started saying that, it felt like you had no places to go. Aside from getting more and more backstage folks out in public now, yay, I feel like some of my battles are starting to be won. I'm starting to turn the battleship. And one thing that's happened is we've had some more islands of sanity that might seem to be growing. Yeah, I say that every week, right? Sanity, clarity, and the big picture for Star Trek. And it's not always a pitched battle out there. Sometimes it's just murky, confusing. Sometimes we've gone from the desert, we've gone from the fallow times, right, before 2017, to a time when we've got so many headlines. Even when we don't have fresh Trek every week, there's still plenty of Trek in the air. We've got so many creatives, past, present, and future, in front of and behind the camera who are talking, going as guests to conventions, whether officially or not, they're on their own. And there's always some Star Trek in the air. And yet I've been one to, I don't make fun of it, but just kind of discard and be thankful that the movie saga, or lack thereof, of the last few years has been a blessing. It's fine. It's fine. We don't have to worry about that. So that's our topic today. But yes, welcome to Trekland Tuesdays Live, everything Trek. I'm Dr. Trek, haha, and I'm glad to see you here. If you're watching us later on YouTube, not live, welcome. Make sure and keep the conversation going. Leave some comments below, and maybe you can join us on a Tuesday afternoon. Now, gang, I won't beat around the bush here. It has been kind of a fallow time for Star Trek news. Now, what's great is we had the big two conventions, but still lots going on. GalaxyCon San Jose, a lot of conventions happening around the world. Long Island, who is this weekend or last weekend? Anyway, there's still lots of activity, lots of chances for you to get out, see your favorite folks in person. Of course, they may be more of a signing show than they are a convention, meaning the panels won't be as much. The fan activity won't be as much. It'll all just be more like county fair circus than a convention, old school convention. But it's still a great chance to get out and see folks. And the socials are flooded from the actors and from fans both about what they're seeing and doing. So that's good. I am in no mean talking about we're in a death spiral here for Star Trek news. But one thing that I've been saying, and also today, hang on, I have an unboxing. Ooh. No, one thing that in the rush of week to week, month to month news that we've had for most of the year, there have been some percolations about what's happening on the movie front. Now, you can look at all this as the headlines, of which they're very sparse. It's really more about gleanings from longer pieces. So when something about Paramount is announced and there's a whole slate of titles, you have to kind of pick out the Star Trek. There's not been any Star Trek-centric debate, except for one exception, which I'll get to in a second. And even that's nothing on the nose. Everything we're at in this murky time is piecemeal. And that's maddening for some people. Thankfully, for the most part, the world is all focused on the TV side of things, on Kurtzman Trek, on the Kurtzman era. And there's plenty to go there. And even if one is not your favorite, I mean, we've been through all that. We're having our protest campaigns. We're having the Save Prodigy, Renew Prodigy, and Save Lower Decks, and all of that. All of that. Victory lap for Discovery, which is infinitely, I'm going to say it, infinitely more Trekish now than it was when it started, or at least of a uniform piece that doesn't stick out. And over the years, that stuck out part, it's going to be eroded into a smoother surface to match everything else, just the way a stone in a river, a rough rock in a creek in a fast-flowing stream gets that way. And I'm not insulting everybody who actually loved the first season. I'm just saying all the rest of us and the creatives are going to find ways to blend Discovery's rough spots and Picard's rough spots into a tableau. But that's when where our attention lies. No one, I mean, few people are. And I'm going to say, I try to always instantly light up and go magnetize myself when I find one live at a con, passing, at a party, whatever an event is. When I find someone who says they are a big fan of the Kelvin movies and they have been a fan of the alternate universe, and they became that way in 2009, and that was their first Trek, up and down the line. They're sparse in mainstream conventions, in mainstream Treks, in Vegas's and San Diego's. They tend to pop up more in smaller gatherings that aren't so big focused, because big tends to indicate longtime fans or people who have incomes to get there. And so if they're a younger fan, and I say younger, it's been 15 years since 2009 debuted, gang. 15 years. So those folks aren't exactly Gen Zers anymore. They're up into their 30s and got some earning power. But all this is to say that it's been easy not just to not pay attention to the movie news, but not to have to pay attention to the movie news. So let's run through it real fast. And then there's some more to throw on top of that. Because I know as much as a lot of us are not paying close attention to the movie news, there are some people that are. And there are some people who are very, very aggregated. Aggregated? If they're in a poll sample, they're aggregated. Otherwise, individually, they are aggravated at this lack of, and none more so than Chris Pine himself, who's gone off. He's done the other career things. He is not stuck in that paranoia about I can't be Kirk my whole life. He's fine. He's totally set, and he's thrilled and anxious to get back to playing Spock. And so is just about the entire rest of that cast. Carl Urban is tearing it up with The Boys, all of his movies. But I know he'd like to be back and being McCoy. I hope he is. But the Kelvin universe is an alternate universe. And what has, beyond that little circle of fans, what little news we've happened has been bang, bang, bang. We've had this delay on the Star Trek 4 movie. Turnover. Who's in charge? And we'll get to that. It seems like no one's in charge because no one is. Or they're outvoted, or they're countermanded, or there are new players in the game constantly. And that is why we've had, more than anything else, I think, that's why we've had delay. It's not even about, Paramount has rebounded from the days when they had to pull out of paying Chris Pine his full promised salary because the Chinese backers pulled out, and it was a financial thing. We're past those days. But here's what we know about the movie situation right now. So there is a Star Trek 4 sequel with yet the latest writer. It's a screenplay by a screenwriter named Steve Yockey, written on TV, Supernatural, Doom Patrol. He showran The Flight Attendant, which was Kaylee Cuoco's streaming sitcom, and the Sandman spinoff Dead Boy Detectives for Netflix, which is coming. So genre-ish stuff, nothing hardcore. He was going to be working on it. There was no director attached, but that's where it is. I know the delay and the vagueness of it was frustrating to Chris Pine, as I said. The fact that Matt Shackman from WandaVision left the project in the summer 2022, right before they were supposed to start, because they'd had it on the slate for December 23. Remember all this? This is why it's just been a blur. There's a whole lineage to this script. It'll be interesting to see how many names, if any, are attached to if this is totally. But what I'm talking about today, gang, wait, what? There's an Origins movie. It was kind of a shocker. And this has all just been since March. We've had a succession of headlines. So in March, we get trade stories in Variety that, yeah, there's a Star Trek 4 coming along somewhere that's supposed to be the final movie for the Chris Pine Kelvin crew, but that there is an origin story. January reported a follow-up in March, directed by Toby Haynes from Andor, who directed USS Callister on Black Mirror. Okay. And Seth Graham-Smith, who wrote Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Okay. But what was most intriguing of all, aside from the names that we barely knew, and certainly nobody had ties to existing Star Trek, was, and I'm going to quote this, the movie was going to expand on the Star Trek universe and be an origin story that takes place decades before the 2009 movie. And this is one thing we talked about. This has been a year, right? Well, it felt like a year. This was January 24, and then again in March. People were all like, what does it mean? What does it mean? Let's go back and remember. Look at our definitions. Let's use our words. Decades before. Said this a few weeks back. 2009 movie had a prologue, right? The death of Kirk. I mean, the birth of Kirk on the Kelvin, the inciting incident that created the Kelvin universe, the attack on the Kelvin, with George Kirk, second in command, taking command for Captain Robot. That was the prime sliver of 2009 that people forgot about, which introduced the Romulan supernova into the prime canon. Here's an example where maybe not everybody appreciated it, enjoyed it, liked it, but for better or for worse, we were stuck with the Romulan supernova. Now, it went through 82 permutations because it wasn't tied down exactly what was going on in the movie, so that left it up to, the comic will define it, that Orci and Kurtzman are writing themselves, or Bob Orci anyway. Oh, no, now it's going to be redefined with later Star Trek series, one after the other. So, okay, Picard, okay. That was then. That was then, this is now. What we've got is this origin movie. If it took place decades before that, well, which part of the timeline? The 2250s main storyline? The 10 years before Kirk and Spock? Are we decades before the 2250s? Or are we decades before the 2230s, which was the earliest prologue sequence? Kirk's birth to Winona in the shuttle, blah, blah, blah. Because decade, either way, if they're referring to the 2250s, and I'm in the weeds here, but gang, I rarely get to go to the weeds anymore, so I'm going to do it with you. Decades, 20 years, would be the 2230s. So at the very least, it's going to flesh out that time of the Kelvin, of what was going on at that period. But what's probably happening here is decades before the prologue, which would be the 2210s, which would be more midway between Archer and Kirk. It would be more midway between First Contact, the founding of the Federation, the Romulan War, and the founding of the Federation in 2161, the Romulan War in the late 2150s, just after the events of Enterprise. Damn it. Should have let them gone on and let us see that. And then had a big movie that you could have done the war on a movie scale and budget. But, okay, we're still waiting on that. Or are we? Because in the clunky language of promotion people, and I'm going to say this, people not familiar with the ongoing canon, especially what's being done on the Kurtzman shows, you could be, what I said at the time was maybe this is decades before, meaning the origin time. Now, since then, that got tons of wagging. This will serve, it said in January, as an origin story of sorts for the main timeline of the entire franchise. So no Kelvin, we're Prime, which by definition, if it was the 2230s or before, it would have been Prime anyway. We didn't need to be told that, but it's there. Okay? So the worry comes in with a lot of fans going, oh no, what are these guys, gals, peeps? Who are they and why are we trusting them with our Star Trek? Now, one thing I have to point out, a couple of things. Beyond throws a lot of canon at you very fast and loose with the Franklin and the Makos and the Romulan War. There's a lot of this very undertapped, unexplored segment of history that you get in bits and bobs. And I got to tell you, I was having apoplectics the night we saw the world premiere of Beyond at Comic-Con 8 years ago. And on the walk back from the band show where they had it there on the bay, I fell into a huge, deep discussion with my buddy James Kerwin, and we were hashing out, trying to remember with no audio-visual aids, nothing written down yet, nothing established. I was taking notes as I sat in my seat. And that's all I had to go on that. And we finagled it out. That almost to the same way that, excuse me, Michael Burnham is exactly slotted into the timeline, exactly where she has to be a foster daughter to fit in with the Sarek family with Spock, etc. So was every aspect connected to the Franklin, its Makos, its captain, yada yada. It was all exactly slotted in. It was a ship built just before the NX-01, but not as ballyhooed, and then it was pressed into service for the Romulan War. And the NX-01 Archer ship was ballyhooed because it was the first Warp 5 engine. That was the first warp, lesser warp engine. Anyway, it fit. Sometimes you wonder why things aren't talked about later on. Why aren't the denobulans talked about? Well, it's when they were invented. It's when they were invented in real time. And then we retcon, we gap fill and canon smooth why we particularly didn't hear about a thing, right? That comes along later. So this class of ship, this era of the show, on one hand, was a welcome fill to some empty gaps in the timeline, in the background, the universe of Trek. But at the same time, the implications were a little odd. So I should have said started today, I'm going to be long on revelations. I'm going to be short on revelations and more on implications. My point here is that these people that on the paper, on the surface of things, I don't know that I would trust them to get really detailed with canon. Just keep telling your fake Kelvin stories. It's going to be fine. Well, guess what? That was pre-Kelvin told in a Kelvin movie. That was a lot more than a sliver of a Romulan supernova. That was a lot of backstory. And this guy, the captain, the crew of the Franklin had been hanging around. Idris Elba, wasted in this, had been wasted. But they predated everything with Kelvin. So you couldn't dance around. That was the whole point. It had been that long. It had been nearly 100 years, 90 years. That was getting dicey. We did the math. It panned out. Now we're talking about the whole movie. So on one hand, we could be nervous Nellies that this is going to get botched or just feel weird and clumsy if they're not using shared creatives. On the visual side, much less on the conceptual side. I hope they check in with each other. Harv Bennett's movie team on Star Trek V checked in with the TNG crew. The Enterprise D was going to be the Enterprise 7 to show the passage of time until the Roots folks worked, David Gerald and Dorothy and Gene and Susan Sackett, all the folks working on the origins of TNG, Bob Justman, found out what the movie had already done, paid for, and filmed. Oh, they went with letters. And they've gone with the A. So let's ratchet this back. So for a while, would that have been the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the Enterprise G? They decided, that seems a little weird. Maybe that's a little too far in the future. We'll come back to D. There's a rare time here where the movies work together. And then in 6, since Leonard Nimoy was the linchpin of this 35th anniversary deal, he was in the Star Trek 6 movie, as well as his ballyhooed guest star 2-parter 5th season Next Generation for the anniversary that year, Unification 1 and 2. And he was the linchpin that could look back and forward, had a hand in both projects, and could speak up for this. And so you get the space cowboy diplomacy line with that vibe back and forth. Didn't need to be a big link, because everything back in the day was all about don't confuse the audience if they don't know. And we're going to assume that half our audience doesn't know. So we can't bog down with canon details going and coming unless it's absolutely vital to the story. No throwaway lines. Well, we're not living in that era anymore, are we? Lower Decks, Prodigy, go down the line. Okay, Strange New Worlds, Picard. Point being is, people are more and more concerned about this origin movie. Who's doing it? What's their background? Now, here's the thing. So now we've got the origin movie, again, in the hands of director Toby Haynes. The USS Callister, Black Mirror, feels good to me on that account. and Andor, the series. I have no opinion on Andor. And a script by Seth Grahame-Smith, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Let's see what else he's got going. That was first blast January, March. April comes news that they are working on the movie, that 4 is there. They're paralleling. They're not fighting each other. They're not fighting for budget, bucks, and attention. They're intending to make both movies. The Star Trek Arabic number 4, which would be the last Chris Pine, which has had this long gestation period, generations of writers and directors attached. And then the origin story, now called the untitled Star Trek origin story. All right? That it's set decades before the Star Trek film. Still same people attached. Haynes is director, Grahame-Smith is writer. That's there. It was confirmed in April, just a few months ago. And they're saying 25, 26. So we'll see about that. And then, a little out of the blue, we get this announcement in May that they have hired themselves a Harve Bennett. That they have hired themselves not a Rick Berman, a Harve Bennett. Or if you want to, look at this, a Kevin Feige, whatever. Simon Kinberg, who is a British-born filmmaker, to produce the next feature film, to be the producer, right, over the director-writer. It's a director-driven media, sure, but producing the new films going forward. This is in May. He's best known for writing and or producing several films in the X-Men franchise. X-Men The Last Stand in 2006, Dark Phoenix. He's mainly worked on genre films, including Jumper back in 2008. He made the first 2 Deadpool movies, and he did The Martian. And so because of that, has a Best Picture nomination. So feels like quality here. Still wonder about Star Trek. Now, you could be worried about this going to this time period and laying down things that we're supposed to have to deal with later on. We should bear in mind that Harve Bennett or Nick Meyer had no clue about Star Trek, except to know that it was a big deal. And Harve Bennett, as we just kind of retraced our steps most recently here for his birthday mention, not only did his research and watched all the Star Trek episodes, and that's where he came up with the idea that the most intriguing thing about all of them was this Khan guy, like a seed planet, a space seed planet indeed. And then he's smart enough to reach out to kind of a premium level of fandom, which at the time was the Interstat Letter of Comment zine readers and its editor, and sought them out for opinions. So he did his research, but he recognized he was coming in as a deficit and researched. Nick Meyer was a lot less so that way. He looked at the 5 drafts, took an uncredited credit writing job to pull them together, gave it to 2 of the names that were on the scripts, but it was really his script. He just wanted to get the damn thing done. He was hungry to work and get his name out there, and gave us everything that came since. There are times when folks have jumped in and not known Trek and given us classics like Wrath of Khan and the middle of the movie trilogy to come. So this is not unheralded. So Kinberg, just saying these names over and over again. Simon Kinberg, they've hired him. This would be his first project. They've hired him as a franchise director. Okay, so Haynes, Grahame-Smith, these are all names that, as much as we are not paying attention to the movie, we might want to start paying attention to, me included. Now, what's interesting is, since this hiring news, again, this is the story that was all about this, right? This was a hiring of a guy in the trades, typical story, and this was Star Trek focused. So how much is he weighing in on the script that was already written, on the team that was getting together? There's talk they're expecting to go into pre-production by the end of the year. There was a difference here at the time, back in April or May, excuse me. Hollywood Reporter saying they wanted to get the film into theaters by 2025. Puck saying they're looking at 2026 for a 60th anniversary movie. There we go. And it's said to involve the creation of Starfleet and humankind's first contact with aliens. Now, that got tons of wagging because it's like, we know the first contact story. We've got first contact. Kiddos, the first contact in First Contact appears to be a 24-hour window. The first contact that we see is about 30 minutes. There's a lot more first contacting, and as the Cerritos would tell you, second contacting to come. And humankind's first contact with alien life. What were the first days and months and weeks after Vulcan contact like? What was it like with the Vulcans, and what did it do? Did we have the panic on Earth? That's the reason we supposedly have Area 41 and protecting us from the the Roswell crash in 47. Did we have widespread Earth panic? Was there division? Did we have the first, the paranoia? Did we have the exophobes, versus the people who embraced reaching out? Did it unite the planet? Did it factionalize the planet? That's all rife for storytelling, because then we get one more tidbit of news in July as, again, part of another story, the Skydance Media Paramount story. So here's a tidbit in that. Announces that most of this movie, this Star Trek movie, is going to be set on Earth. Well, yeah. I mean, you might get some glimpses inside Vulcan ships or on Vulcan, but most of this is going to be about the Earth reaction. This is going to, and he directed Andor. Most of this is going to be about what's happening on Earth. Do we get Earthbound characters? Do we get Zephram Cochrane? Do we get some of the names that have been in, beta canon about what's happening at this time? So far, so good. Everything that's been a sliver of info, it fits. It fits. If it's decades before, but it's about first contacts with aliens, it's not uprooting everything we saw in First Contact. It's what happens immediately after. Maybe we even get some more information about World War III, which happened 10 years before First Contact, that Cochrane and everybody around him, civilization was recovering from. Was the populated area, was Southern California, say, decimated by World War III? Half decimated? What was the Hermosa quake in 47? What had that done to, anyway, we're up in Bozeman, Montana, using old Titan II missile silos. What was the rest of the world like? This is like taking Journey to Babel with these crumbs about the Federation and some of the members and fleshing it out to finally do that to our movie. So, gang, on the surface, this does not seem dicey. Now, just for the fact of lack of communication, just for the fact of there not being the Akutas and Sternbach and Bob Blackman and Mike Westbrook, just because there are the key creatives that give us the look and the feel of what we know, i.e. the TV universe, not simultaneously working on a movie the way the Berman era had it with the TNG movies. I mean, the original series movie era, the Monster Maroon era, was established by the time Harve Bennett was doing 5, and then Ralph Winter alone on 6, and the Next Generation trolling along doing what it was doing on TV. We had a time of split times, but as I said, they talked to each other. There was some overlap. Somebody higher up at Paramount made sure they talked to each other. And the last interview that I did, my only interview with Harve Bennett, but it was his last interview, I asked about this time period, what that was like. Did you all even interact with each other? And he was like, no, we did our thing. Somebody somewhere along the way, thankfully, and you had Gene's office still before Gene passed. Well, for 5 anyway, not for 6 so much. But you had some communication pipeline. Is that going to exist now? That's the concern. That's the worry. But I guess I'm here to say, for the most part, so far so good, even though a lot of people are nervous. And a lot of people, as we have seen with the coming of Discovery, not everybody gets it that canon is canon. Some people apparently are able to box it in their brains that concept canon is canon and visual canon, oh, who the hell cares? As long as you've got the dates and times and factoids right, which you should, that the visual representation doesn't matter. Wrong. I hope that's being paid attention to. I hope there's at least a little bit of consulting, if not outright work. We'll see. We'll see. If this indeed goes into pre-production by the end of the year, a 2026 debut is looking, because again, restarting the well-oiled machine is always more difficult than you think. You don't rush into these things. It's been so long, even since the last movie, right? We're coming up on 8 years, coming up on 10 years since it was produced before it debuted. Beyond, that is. So there's no well-oiled machine up and running. It's going to be interesting to see who's hired on a movie level with movie credentials, even with the wall coming down between peak TV, cinematic TV, and cinema. In so many ways, there's no difference. And yes, a lot of the same people work both ways. So I'm hoping that works in our favor here. Section 31 looks like a Wrath of Khan in that it has greatly expanded the TV limits of its times, and they've blown the wad on it. Also, I don't think it's the last we'll see of those sets. So that's our update. We still have an untitled origin movie coming later 25, potentially probably 26. We have a director, we have a writer, and we have a new franchise movie shepherder who's going to exist alongside Alex running Secret Hideout TV, whatever the scale is. And it'll be akin to those days when Harv ran the movie franchise. They were separately shepherded, and Rick was running the TV franchise. It'll be akin to those days. Let's hope there's at least enough crossover across the years, centuries, decades, that things can maintain. Because if this is the start of something and they're going to crank out 3, 4, 5, 6 until the paradigm shifts and the pendulum swings back, and the owners change again, that we still keep adding into our canon. There's plenty of gaps to go to, as I keep preaching. And this would be one of the things I preach about. I'd rather see a Romulan War movie, but hey, this would predate that, because this is the baby steps, even before the Romulan War and the founding of the Federation. It's right for change, and the further back in time it is, and the least it's even been talked about, the more elbow room they have to play with, which is a good thing, without it being an alternate universe, as the ultimate caveat. So, okay, let's see where this takes us. But you know, kids, the ultimate here, and the ultimate regarding Star Trek IV, last movie with the Chris Pine Kelvin crew, is we've just had the deal done for the Skydance merger. There are Skydance movie people who fully intend to walk over and be deciders, movers and shakers for the new overall Paramount movie deal. And yeah, everything else will have promotion and and the TV wings and all that. Well, Alex is up and running. The TV side is secure. What's the thing that there's no clear steerage, as we've seen all the Sturm and Drang with Paramount's situation. Financial ownership, is it wobbly? Is it looking for a buyer, a partner? What's happening? This whole song and dance for the last 5 years is why Star Trek IV has not had a clear vision, a clear leader, a clear voice, no one shepherding the movie empire. And there's been nobody that's why this has wobbled around so much. And now we've just had the latest hiccup. Are we going to have to wait for all that to settle down? Are these brave, optimistic predictions about timelines and deadlines on a schedule for the movies, especially Origins? We'll see. Is his hiring in April going to be subject to review by the new owners? Is that not going to happen? Will he be paid off and somebody will bring somebody else new in? We'll see. Would Skydance, as a potential past financial partner, had a hand in naming him all along? Had Ellison been privy, or his cohorts been privy to this hiring in the first place? We'll see. Since this news, and since the Skydance story, all the news have barely mentioned Star Trek as a franchise jewel in The Crown. There's been very little about Star Trek or any of these particulars since then. And we'll see what happens. We're waiting for the dust to settle, as is everybody. It's not just been about cuts and layoffs. There's who's running the show, who's running the shop, and that's just something we have to wait on. Meanwhile, these dates, these schedules, these names, these intentions are still there. The business side that's where that stands. And for the Canonista side of things, I say that lovingly, so far, people got the wrong ideas. People weren't thinking. But when you look at everything in the light of day, it's okay. So far, so good. All right. See, I knew it. I knew there were just scraps of items there to talk about. But once we start, it's the connecting the dots that takes the time. Now, I promised you late an unboxing. Yay, yay, yay. I've got a boxing to do, so let's get into it. Just trying to be dramatic. It's not that heavy a thing. Okay. And, it's a one-sider. And it is, ta-da, yeah, you probably guessed. It's the Discovery final season, season 5. Oh, look at that. With over 2 hours of special features. My heart has grown warmer to Discovery. It started with the 4th season. And a lot of the bits and pieces that we found out about season 4 and 5, are making a lot of sense now in hindsight. Now that the secrecy spoiler shroud has been lifted. A lot of the younger writers coming to Discovery were pumping in a lot of the feel goods. That's why. And if you've noticed, if you saw my second opinions, I always tried to point these out. Sometimes even some of the writers and creatives were willing to either publicly in their socials or just answer a question for me, some of the cool little Easter eggs. I don't mean Star Trek Easter eggs. I mean names and occasions and moments and what's the story behind them. And it's just little things like that that I've always enjoyed gathering before the memory well got too dry. This is the Discovery final season. There's also a complete Discovery set that's out there. This has got, they're doing that. It's the good quality that you've expected. This is a DVD. And what's funny is they don't even include the paper press release anymore. But I mean, you can see the features here. The features are called the bio things, a team effort, the creature force on Discovery. Okay. Being Michael Burnham. That's interesting. Director development, Star Trek Discovery's The Voyagers of Season 5, which are audio commentaries, deleted scenes, and of course the gag reel. I miss the days of calling it the bloopers. Is that just one of those terms that's going to go away? Like teaser is now the cold open instead of the teaser. I don't know, because no one's having to be teased not to turn the channel. Now it's like no one has to be told not to hit the button on the remote and get their butt up out of the sofa. So it's what it is, not what it's doing. I don't know. I miss teasers. I miss the blooper reels. Seemed like the gag reel would make you want to gag. I know it's a gag. It's funny, but still. Gag, if it's a gag, it feels like it was premeditated. And some of them were. But bloopers sounds more accidental of the moment. Okay, well, I didn't mean to get off on that. Lord knows the world has enough going on without a diatribe about gag versus blooper. Did I just start a whole new controversy? I don't know. Anyway, this is out. It's on sale now. It's been out, for a few days. You can catch it. There's a lot of sidebar things coming on Discovery. The Prodigy DVDs are right around the corner, too, as well. You heard a lot of that product merch news coming out of Comic-Con. Anyway, Discovery Season 5, it's Blu-ray, it's Blue Steel, and the DVDs. It's technically still coming from CBS Home Entertainment. Boom, with the I. Oh, and Paramount. I love how it's co-branded. Once again, are they ever going to get rid of the overlap in the turf? And we'll see. Meanwhile, the events of the last few years have shown that hard media is good to find. Can never predict what the ownership swings, what the moods of streaming platforms are going to be. It's good to be able to put your own hands on your own discs. Discovery Season 5, it's out now. If you are watching us later on YouTube, though, just want to say a couple things, would you please? As you should know, we're having a lot of fun here, in part thanks to my Patreon bunch. So I got to give them a thank you. Got to give our Patreon folks a big thank you. Chuck A., James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Jesse of Crusher, Convo, Lawrence Todd, Helbjörg Gunn Johnson, Justin Porteous, Galinda Bruton, Chris Jiggins, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, Keith Rombach, Comedy Forecast, and Andrew Jazimski, several of whom I was thrilled to be able to see at Vegas. Also, at Vegas, I saw some of these folks: Robert McLean, our live wires, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Alan Hoenzi, James, Dave Gregory, Greg Wigstrom, and Casey Shafsky. Hey, thank you guys so much. Guys, gals, and peeps, if you want to join in on my Patreon, that's fine. It's very simple. It's very simple when you have the cards in order. It's $5 a month or $10 a month. Patreon.com/Trekland Live for a shout out here and access, which are overdue, to the first few generations of backstage interviews, highlights that we began with Portal 47. The first few years of the Portal. Yeah. Hey, otherwise, I mentioned it at the beginning, but it'd be great. TreklandTrucks.com. If you're thinking of coming to LA, look it up. Check it out, TreklandTrucks.com, or at my site, LarryNemecek.com. Your unique, your custom designed, with my help and my concierging, your real life away mission around greater SoCal, 50 plus location sites from the original series through Picard. We'll see if we get any more of these movies ever get to filming. We'll see if any of them are filmed around LA. We could add to that list. Anyway, check it out. It's a lot of fun. And also, it's a Tuesday. Check out the Trek Files. Would you please? The Trek Files is our podcast for Roddenberry this week. Hey, it's a mailbag week, once a season. John Champion, my producer, and I dive into the retro mailbag, and this week it's kids and adults letters from 1975. Some funny stuff and some fun stuff, some cool stuff. Check out the Trek Files, as always, going on. Gang, that's going to do it for me, I think. I just want to remind you, if you want to see more of me in Trekland, it's Larry Nemecek on Twitter X. I'll never stop saying Twitter, will you? Larry Nemecek's Trekland. Like and subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't done it yet. Ring the bell, be knowing not just these, but also whenever we have a live special happening. You never know. You never know. Trekland also on Facebook and Instagram. Don't forget Instagram. Portal47.net. If you just want to jump in the portal, our mini-con all year long, we have a guest tomorrow night that I haven't even told the Portales yet. It's not too late to join today and be with us tomorrow night. That's it for right now. Again, thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for watching live or later. Leave a comment below at any time. And I just got to say, if you are leaving us now, stay healthy. Do all the things. Stay woke. Check the sources. I want to say check the CGI lineage. And yeah, trek well. Everybody.